Recording. Thank you so much, Lisa. Welcome. Good evening. This program is Prostate Cancer Protection on Your Plate. My name is Lori Bumbaco. I have a lot of content to share in a short period of time. I only have an hour to get through all of this amazing information I get to share with you. I'm presenting to you from Cancer Wellness Center, where I work part-time as their oncology dietitian. And what I'm going to do is just share my screen and present a PowerPoint, which for those of you who registered, you will get a copy of these slides and an additional resource that I have to share, which I will provide for you. And thank you again for attending. If you're watching this recording, thanks for being here and taking some time to hopefully learn a little something from me today to improve your cancer protective lifestyle. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and Lisa will just let me know if there's any technical difficulties, because there have been in the past. But I'll share my screen and present to you my PowerPoint. This is prostate cancer protection on your plate, as I shared. I just want to quickly review the alphabet soup, as I call it, after my name. So I have a master's of science degree in nutrition and dietetics. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. Sometimes people like to call me a nutritionist. Sometimes people call me a dietitian. You can call me whatever you prefer. That CSO is an important designation. I'm board certified as a specialist in oncology nutrition. So I find that that uniquely qualifies me to provide nutrition guidance and specific recommendations across the continuum of cancer care. I'm also licensed to practice nutrition in the state of Illinois. So for the agenda this evening, what I want to do is first provide for you the recommendations from the experts for those who have been diagnosed with cancer, but especially prostate cancer. We're gonna kind of intersperse the more specific recommendations according to the experts. I would love to
Lori, real
yes.
quick, just your slides are still showing your upcoming ones on the side.
Oh no. Okay, hang
I
on.
know you don't like that.
I don't know why it's there, because I guess I'll go up here and present from here.
That usually works.
Yeah, I don't know why they're showing. Hang on. Should I stop my share and just try over?
Yeah, probably.
This always seems to
Technical
happen.
difficulties.
Thank you for being patient. I promise you. All right. If I go like that, hang on. We never, this only happens every so often. All right,
You're a master presenter.
let's see if I share this way. Hang on one sec. I'm going to screen two. That's why. All right. Let's see if this works. Okay. Just let me know if it does or doesn't.
Still the same.
It's still the same.
You clicked on slideshow?
Yeah, this one on the bottom here. I don't know why. Does anyone else have any PowerPoint expertise to lend?
When using two screens.
Yeah, because that's a pain. Let's see if no, that's not it. I'm so sorry, everyone. We're gonna figure this out.
Well, if all else fails, we see your upcoming slides.
I wonder if I do this. Hang on one sec. Let's try this. I moved my, no. All right, let me just try this and see if that'll work from there.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we did it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for, did you pause the recording, or was it recording the whole time?
Nope, we have it all on video.
I hope everybody enjoyed that little blooper from us. Compliments of Lori, the dietitian from Cancer Wellness Center. All right, so thanks for staying put or if you're watching this re-recording, just fast forward right through there, right? All right, so I'm going to go through the expert nutrition recommendations. I want to talk also about some specific nutrients of interest, because sometimes people are like, tell me what to eat. And I love that idea of addition rather than subtraction. And then as time allows, we'll have some open Q&A. Okay, so what do the experts recommend? And who are the experts? Well, this graphic summarizes it very nicely. This is from the World Cancer Research Fund. It's an international consortium of a lot of the experts from all different disciplines. And in the States here, we have the American Institute for Cancer Research. They are really my lifeline. They are the experts. They translate all of the research that's ever been done or is being done in the world of oncology and nutrition. And so you probably see right in the center there in orange print are cancer prevention recommendations. And you're probably thinking, no, I've been diagnosed, so tell me now what to do. Well, if you follow along clockwise, you'll see at the very bottom right corner there that after someone's been diagnosed with a cancer, this is still what we recommend, because it seems like the mechanisms at play here that would prevent cancer from happening in the first place are the very same ones that help a cancer from recurring or even from progressing. Okay, so what I'd like to do is really starting at the bottom left corner, we're going to work our way around this. It's almost a full circle here. I'm going to go around clockwise and highlight what the recommendations are and why they might matter for prostate cancer, and then give some tips along the way of how you might be able to implement them. Okay, so if you notice, the first one there at the bottom left is to be a healthy weight. Well, goodness gracious, dietitians certainly do a lot of work in this category. So maintain a healthy weight. What even is a healthy weight, right? Quote unquote, healthy weight. So in the research, what they do is they use this terminology BMI. That stands for body mass index. Have you heard of that? And that range there is essentially the desirable range in terms of cancer protection. If you need a dietitian to calculate your BMI, he or she can certainly do that. Online, you certainly will find a very helpful, reliable tools where you just simply put in your height and your weight and it will calculate your BMI for you. The other parameter that's used to really sort of define what a healthy weight is in the research is waist circumference. And I like this parameter a little bit more than I do BMI, because this number, less than 40 inches, pertains to males. And the idea is that that's really accessing the information we want to know about somebody's weight, where they carry it, right? So if we carry our weight in our midsection around our waist, sort of like we have an apple shape, that's indicative of metabolic health and also cancer risk. So, and I want to explain that a little bit more now. So why does weight, especially that weight in the abdomen, why does that even influence cancer risk? Well, what happens is that weight that we carry there in excess can create metabolic as well as hormonal dysfunction. And so we see that the extra fat in our belly can increase levels of inflammation, can contribute to poor blood sugar control. It can and also increase circulation of cancer promoting substances. So if we can shrink the inches somewhat, we might be able to improve the function metabolically and hormonally and change some of these very direct parameters that are influencing cancer risk, particularly prostate cancer. So we also see from the research that there's an inverse association of how we would define obesity using BMI with the risk of aggressive prostate cancer as well as mortality. So hopefully you understand inverse association means the more likely someone is to be obese, the more likely the risk of aggressive prostate cancer and mortality. So if we're looking to control weight, a dietitian can help with that. And hopefully the mechanism will be influential to reduce, again, those dysfunctions according to metabolism and hormonal dysfunction. Now, this is important to point out because half of prostate cancer patients do go on to receive ADT or androgen deprivation therapy, and a whopping 70% of men who are on ADT will experience weight gain. and likely it's related to the androgen deprivation therapy. So very much in my clinical practice, but also here at Cancer Wellness Center, I do work with gentlemen to manage their weight. So how do we lose weight then? How do we maintain a healthy weight if we're going to pursue this? Well, we do know from the research that diets do not work, but instead shifting our focus on healthy eating behaviors, as I'm going to highlight in this presentation, while also changing some of our habits, this is going to create more significant and sustainable results. And it's interesting, it's sometimes surprising for some people to learn that as little as 5 to 10% of weight loss from your current weight will create some improvement in those parameters that I just listed on the last slide. So it doesn't take a lot, and a little bit will go a long way. Now, supervised programs that include both activity and nutrition, they have been shown in the research to be effective in terms of sustaining that 5 to 10% weight loss, but also improving metabolic and hormone function. So essentially, the nutrition piece of that is a high quality diet. I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but especially with attention to portion size. So portion control seems to be very helpful for a lot of people if they're looking to lose and maintain their weight. But then also to incorporating that aerobic and resistance training. Anytime we lose weight, we're going to lose muscle, and we don't want that. We want to maintain muscle. That happens to be cancer protective. So it's important to incorporate that as well. So a dietitian can help with that nutrition counseling piece. And we also have this amazing program here at Cancer Wellness Center that we call Food and Fitness for Wellness. We recruit for this group about twice a year, and we run a very effective mind-body really approach in terms of integrating a cancer protective lifestyle. So when you get these slides, you can click on the link and it'll share more about that program. And I'm going to move up that circle. We're going clockwise still. And the next recommendation is, maybe you've heard of this, eat a plant-based diet. Now, I could give an entire presentation just on this alone, but I don't have enough time today. So I'm going to highlight the most important components. So a true or false question, a plant-based diet is vegan. Not quite. So it could be, but it doesn't have to be. So a whole food plant-based diet includes whole grains, vegetables, fruits, beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds. It seems to be effective because it's abundant in nutrients that not only support our immune function, but also regulate inflammation and also exert anti-cancer properties, like in a sense, like antioxidants is one good example of that. It just so happens too that a whole food plant-based diet is associated with reducing the risk of recurrence, particularly in prostate cancer, with improving body weight, what do you know, with lowering the risk of diabetes, improving cardiovascular health, and also lowering the risk of dying from any cause. So a whole food plant-based diet means eating a lot of those foods a lot of the time. It doesn't mean eliminating animal foods altogether, but it just means eating most meals and most snacks have a lot of those foods involved. Okay, so here's some images and some examples of doing that. Something like, and I was thinking seasonal, like think of like a vegetarian chili. That's a great example of a plant-based meal choice. Buffalo cauliflower, if you're a football fan, right? Something like oatmeal with some berries for breakfast. Another simple, delicious example, and maybe some apples, which is a great seasonal choice, with something like peanut butter, or if you want to make like a caramel sauce using dates, this is where a dietitian can really help you expand your choices. Okay, so we can also transition. So maybe your plate already looks like something like this, where a lot of it has the meat, right? The animal protein. And then also I see a lot of starches on the plate, right? So transitioning can help us incorporate more vegetables. And when we do that, we still can enjoy things like animal proteins, but we're just going to have a smaller portion, right? And so we're sort of crowding out the things that are less helpful and incorporating a nice satisfying choice by having something that's going to be more beneficial in terms of cancer protection. There's a lot of iterations of a whole food plant-based diet. There's a lot of them that are delicious, lots of cookbooks, lots of examples that I can give you. But again, for the sake of time, I'm going to keep moving for the presentation. Do keep in mind that vegan and vegetarian choices are not necessarily healthier. A well-planned vegetarian or vegan diet can be nutritious and can support our health, but just because it's a vegan choice, it doesn't necessarily make it healthier. Some choices are ultra processed and they add a lot of extra saturated fats, a lot of extra sugars, a lot of extra salt. So that's where reading labels can be helpful. A dietitian can help you translate, what's on a label to help it make sense for you. And it really gives us that information at the point of purchase so that we can put it into our cart and bring it home or not. So here's a good example, and I just did this for our September program, Ask the Dietitian. This is two nutrition facts panels side by side. One is a vegan ice cream, quote unquote ice cream. We'll call it a non-dairy dessert. And the other is ice cream. Would you be able to tell from this information which one is vegan or not? Probably not. I know I can based on cholesterol. So this one does not have any cholesterol, so it can't be from an animal food. So it's vegan friendly, but in the nutritional sense, if we're really going to dissect this, they look like very similar choices, right? They're definitely both high in added sugars. And they also give a pretty good amount of saturated fat. So just because it's vegan, again, not necessarily nutritionally superior. Next recommendation, to eat less fast food and highly processed food. Another presentation I can spend hours speaking about these two things. So what percentage of calories do Americans typically eat from processed food? Would you guess? A whopping 60%. So that's a high percentage, right? So most of the food we're eating is highly processed. What are some examples of that? You know them when you see them. It's like technically edible, but it's not really food. So it's sugary drinks like soda. It's actually some protein bars. It's our deli meats. It's our chips. It's our cookies. It's things that, again, like probably came from food somewhere, but it's mostly man-made manufactured ingredients. They tend to be highly palatable, meaning they hit our taste buds and they send out some really powerful signals saying eat more, right? And so we find that when we have a lot of highly processed food, especially 60% in our diet, we're going to want more of it. It increases our cravings for those foods. So why might they be influential in terms of prostate cancer risk? What happens is if we're eating 60% of calories, we're only eating what percentage is coming from our whole plant foods? Not a high percentage, right? And also we see in the research that eating them is linked with the risk for weight gain. So research has shown that as much as 500 extra calories per day resulted in 2 pounds of weight gain per week. And what they did in this research study is they had individuals in a controlled lab setting and they let them eat as much as they wanted until they were satisfied. They put them for 2 weeks on a highly processed diet. They gave them a week off and they put them on 2 weeks on a whole food plant-based diet. Guess what happened? The time they were on the whole food plant-based diet, they ate to satisfaction. They were very satisfied, but they actually lost a little bit of weight. But when they were on the highly processed food diet, they ended up eating 500 more calories per day. They gained about 2 pounds a week. So it goes to show if we can maybe nudge that percentage a little bit in our favor, it could be helpful. So this is a nice graphic that I like to share about highly processed food. Some people worry it's the extra, right? It's the extra sugars, the extra salt, the extra saturated fat. But some people also argue that it's too little of the stuff that we need, the stuff that's cancer protective, right? So this is a nice graphic. These ultra processed foods tend to be high in sugar, simple carbohydrates, saturated fat, also salt. But then it also decreases our intake of zinc, certainly plant proteins, fiber, a really important non-nutrient in the cancer protection world. Also some other vitamins as well as calcium. So there might be more than one thing going on here when we eat a lot of highly processed foods. How do we do it? Well, here's some examples. And so you see from left to right, we're going up the processed food spectrum, right? So we're trying to just shift towards more whole food choices, right? And obviously, if we have things like cereal that has some artificial colors, that's probably highly, highly processed, right? So we're just trying to shift our way down, right, down that spectrum and making sure we're having more whole choices. And here's some good examples in the category of proteins, right? So fish, chicken, eggs, beans, and lentils, those are less processed. And so they're going to retain more nutrition and they're not going to accumulate all those additives. But when we have things like processed meat, like hot dogs or bacon, we can see nutritionally what's going on here, right? Next recommendation, speaking of meat, is to eat less red meat and limit processed meat. So what are the recommendations? The experts say, suggest that red meat is nutritious for us. So we just want to cap it off and have sort of a budget for it per week. And they're recommending no more than 12 to 18 ounces of cooked red meat per week. I think that's pretty liberal, right? And it shows us that because something like red meat has nutrition, it can help in overall healthy nutrient dense diet. It's just that when we go overboard with it, that's when things become problematic. Now, as it relates to processed meat, which is defined here as meat that has been transformed by salting, curing, fermentation, or by smoking, so things like hot dogs or bacon or deli meat, they don't give us a number to limit to. So they really want us to limit this altogether. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's not much nutrition to speak of in these choices. Right, they taste good, but why do red meat and processed meat increase risk? So processed meat just happens to have this perfect storm in terms of a combination of compounds that are found to be linked with the risk for prostate cancer. Certainly more convincing data for colorectal cancer. So if that's something that's on your radar as well, I know in clinic, I counsel individuals who are diagnosed with colorectal cancer to really try to cut back on that processed meat. But also too, if we're eating a high amount of those foods, we're not eating those cancer protective foods on a whole food plant-based diet, right? So how do we eat less of those foods? I'm all about substitutions, right? So even things like ground turkey, ground chicken, but as I shared with the vegetarian chili, things like beans and lentils, they are so great at giving like that mouthfeel and that satisfaction in things like burgers and chili and soups, our tacos, our meatballs, meatloaf. Like the sky's the limit. This is a very popular trend, and it's one I can get behind because you can see what happens here is we're infusing more nutrition in those recipes when we do that. But really, I think arguably they are just as delicious. They may not be the same. So if you're looking for a juicy burger, go for the juicy burger, right? But just think about where you can make some of these substitutions that will make a more sustainable change easier for you. Or even try something else altogether. So a lot of times people kind of are in that habit of deli meat for their lunch, right? And they have a sandwich for lunch. So we talk about other non-processed versions of that. So things like tuna salad or egg salad that they're going to add avocado and mash it in, or hummus, and making that instead of relying on a habit like having a deli sandwich. Tempeh or tofu are very satisfying plant proteins. It's no secret, I'm a big fan of both of them, and I'm going to talk more about them in the presentation in a moment. And Meatless Monday, if you haven't heard of them, it's a nonprofit organization. You can literally Google Meatless Monday and it'll bring you up to their campaign, and it has a wealth of information and resources, some recipes included to help you incorporate some meatless meals into your diet. All right, we're going to move on to the next recommendation, drink less sugary beverages. So experts want us to minimize sugary drinks. We call them SSBs, sugar sweetened beverages. So good examples are soda, sports drinks, or coffee drinks. The list goes on. You might be surprised to see. And what's the concern about some of these SSBs? Well, they have a lot of calories without the nutrition in a small portion. They're highly palatable. We tend to drink them and we want more, right? And maybe it's the sugar association. I'm not sure, but there are concentrated sugars in these drinks and they're very easy to drink in excess. So when we look at the research, there is convincing evidence that sugary drinks cause weight gain. And for many people I work with, if they're looking to manage their weight and they are consuming sugary drinks, that's one change that can be significant for that person. So how many grams of added sugars in something like a soda, and how many in something like a sports drink, would you guess? If you were here, I might put you on the spot, but I'm going to share it with you. So almost in a 20-ounce serving, we find over 16 teaspoons of added sugar. That's a lot. So imagine taking out like a teaspoon from your draw and putting that in 20 ounces of water and how much sugar that is that you're adding. And sports drinks are not that far behind, right? So I think we have this health halo assumption with our sports drinks, right? That they're hydrating and they're giving us some good fuel. Where I would argue that it's 8.5 teaspoons in that 20 ounces and not necessarily something that we need unless we're a competitive athlete and we are heavily perspiring. We likely are not benefiting from sports drinks like this. A little bit more about added sugars. Another question for you, how many teaspoons of added sugars do Americans eat per day? So on average, there's 17 teaspoons for most of us. Some of us are having 30 teaspoons or more per day. So I have job security, I always say. So excessive sugar consumption is linked with the accumulation of fat, especially in our organs like our liver. And sometimes it's also found in our muscle. We know from the research that there's greater risk of extra body weight, especially body fat, when we're taking in sugar sweetened beverages. And there's a greater risk of type 2 diabetes as well as metabolic syndrome from this excessive amounts of added sugar. So this is one thing to cut back. People who drink the most in terms of sugar sweetened beverages have an increase in overall cancer risk and overall cancer mortality compared to those who drink the least amount. So it's important to put that into context, right? So having any at all doesn't mean you're going to raise your risk or die from cancer. It's comparing the people who drink a lot. So you probably would need to be drinking a lot to put yourself in this category. So again, something to be aware of, something to maybe potentially cut back on if that's something that you're noticing could be improved. There's no direct link between added sugar and cancer risk, and it's important to point that out. So experts think that there's something more to the story here, and that people that are drinking a lot of sugar sweetened beverages also have a lifestyle that might put them at risk. It might be that their weight gain is what's to be the problem, right? So they're not really sure, but it makes sense that if we want to tip the scales in our favor, if we can minimize these added sugars, we're going to be more cancer protective. So how do we drink less? I love this image. It looks so refreshing. So again, replacement. So think about, what it is that would be satisfying to you instead of a sugary drink. Is it carbonated water or seltzer? Things like infused drinks, like you see like mint and lemon on the slide. Unsweetened tea and coffee. I'm actually going to talk about that in a moment too. They seem to be cancer protective, right? So it's almost like you would be getting a bonus effect if you replaced using unsweetened tea and coffee in your diet. Also, too, think about saving sugar sweetened beverages for special occasions only if that's not what you do. Think of water as you're already not doing that, right? You only have it once in a while. Great. I think you're doing a great job. If you're looking to take it to the next level, maybe you hardly have it at all, right? Try water as your default beverage. Check what else that you're eating might have extra sugar. So maybe you're already doing these things. You're like, I don't drink soda. I don't have coffee drinks. I don't do sports drinks. Is there anything else that might be contributing added sugars to your diet? So is it something like dessert, or is it hiding in something like your breakfast cereal? You can think about which ones are worth keeping around or which ones you're ready to kick to the curb. Okay. Think about portion size. So we're going back to that ice cream. So this one has 23 grams of added sugar, and it's in only measly 2/3 of a cup, which is very small. If you had the whole container, you'd be having 69 grams of added sugar. So just try to use that nutrition facts panel in your favor and think about natural sugars, things that are naturally sweet, seasonal fruit, local fruit. Our dates, for example, very sweet without having to worry about the added sugar component. Those are naturally sweetened, and they're a package that is cancer protective for us. Number 7 is to limit alcohol consumption. So it's best not to drink alcohol in terms of cancer protection. They're not really sure what the link is with alcohol to cancer. We do know that alcohol metabolizes into acetaldehyde, which does damage DNA and prevents our body from repairing damaged cells. So technically that's a carcinogen, right? Alcohol also reduces folate absorption. That's a B vitamin that's important for us to eat. So if we're drinking too much alcohol and we're not absorbing folate from our diet, that can put us at risk, because we do find that men that have adequate levels of folate tend to have a lower risk for prostate cancer. So if you're low in folate, could that increase your risk We don't really know, but again, that's just an association that's been shown in the research. Alcohol also acts as a solvent. So if there's any other carcinogens in our environment, so smoking is a great example of that, it's going to make the alcohol is a solvent for them. So it makes those carcinogen even more potent and damaging. And also alcohol consumption contains calories. So it definitely could contribute to weight gain. So drinking less, I think there's some great campaigns right now. If you think before you drink, just moderate how much you're having. You can have smaller sizes, you can sip slowly, you can keep some days or some weeks alcohol free, you can skip around. There's a lot of non-alcoholic choices now. The market has exploded and it's one that I welcome. If you're curious to learn a little bit more about the impact of alcohol on our health or some steps to reducing your consumption, you can click right on this link. The NIH has a really great resource for you. All right. Last recommendation, do not rely on dietary supplements for cancer protection. What? The dietitian is saying we don't need dietary supplements. They aren't recommended for cancer protection. So here's the thing. Dietary supplements are not the same as eating whole foods. Our bodies absorb a wide range of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytochemicals. And it seems that they do their job because they're combined together and they have this synergy combined together. But when we take a dietary supplement, we're isolating out one of those components. So it's lost all its good friends in the original food form. So it's probably not going to work as well and has a limited effect. But the research is unequivocal. There's no benefit for survivors. After you've been diagnosed, we see no benefit. So why aren't they recommended? So this is a really good example in the world of prostate cancer. There was a trial, and this is a little dated, but still very important today to note. It was funded by the NIH in 2001, and it was called the SELECT trial. And what they found is that men that were given a vitamin E supplement, they followed them prospectively, they had an increased risk for prostate cancer compared to those men who were not taking a vitamin E supplement. Yikes. So they actually had to stop that trial early, right, for ethical reasons. They also found in this trial that men that were taking a selenium supplement and also had a high blood level of selenium in their body had a higher risk for prostate cancer. So we don't see necessarily any benefit to taking supplements. We thought there might be, right? Because vitamin E and selenium are both antioxidants, and we would think they'd be protective against cancer, but that is not the case. And we're worried that there might be more to the story about the amounts that are taken, or that the supplement doesn't work the same as it does in the whole food form. And that's why dietitians say food first, supplement second. So food can supply all of the nutrients we need. We don't necessarily need to rely on a supplement. However, sometimes there are exceptions when a supplement might be indicated for somebody to treat a deficiency. So that's diagnosed by a healthcare professional. But if you have any questions about that, just talk to your care team and see if a supplement would be recommended for you. Eating a varied diet with a lot of our whole plant foods, that's going to give us all the nutrients we require for like physical health, right? But it also gives us more. So when we're eating this whole food plant-based diet, we're getting the addition of these cancer protective compounds. Okay. So speaking of that, I want to talk more about that. So I want to highlight some special foods and nutrients in the world of prostate cancer nutrition. It is important to point out that there is no single food alone that's protective. So some of these might excite you, but keep in mind, we want to look at the overall picture and the total diet. That's what seems to matter in terms of cancer protection. And the cumulative effects of the entire diet is really what matters most. All right, so I'm going to start out with one of my favorites, cruciferous vegetables. Have you heard of them? So they contain these fancy words, and you can impress your friends. Isothiocyanates and indoles. Those are phytochemicals, and they've been shown in preclinical data to inhibit the growth of prostate cancer cells. They help package up carcinogens for elimination, and they are consistently linked with reduced risk for prostate cancer as well as recurrence and metastasis. So men that are eating more of them, they seem to have this reduced risk. Really good to know. Experts do prefer that we include raw forms of cruciferous vegetables to retain the enzymatic activity that exerts the greatest protection. I don't want that to stop you from having broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. How delicious are they roasted, right? So we're cooking them, but every so often, if you can have a raw form of them, like some raw broccoli with some hummus, that would really give you the ultimate, like supreme protection in terms of this mechanism. Okay, I'm going to move on to allium vegetables. So that's our whole family of onions and garlic. How many different species of allium vegetables are there? You might be surprised. There's over 500. I was shocked. So if you go to the farmers markets, which are still open by May, you'll be surprised to see there's like different heirloom varieties. There's things we don't find in the common grocery store, right? So when you have the opportunity, I encourage you to explore some different heirloom varieties because they really are delicious. They pack such a punch, not only in terms of flavor, but also as it seems in terms of their cancer protective qualities. They contain something called organosulfur compounds. That's what gives it that odor. And in preclinical data, they've been shown to induce cell cycle arrest and apoptosis of prostate cancer cells. This is a good thing. Research suggests that the highest compared to the lowest consumption in terms of people that are eating more onions and garlic versus less, that it may reduce the risk for prostate cancer. So first, in some way, this mechanism is still in play. All right. One of my favorite groups, soy food. So we're talking tofu, tempeh, edamame, soy milk. They all contain genistein, and that's been shown to inhibit the synthesis of prostaglandins, and they promote inflammation. And inflammation is linked with prostate cancer risk as well. They also contain daidzein and glycitin, and along with genistein, that they have been shown to induce the cell cycle arrest in prostate cancer cells. Again, telling prostate cancer cells to die. This is really great stuff. So tempeh is pictured here. It's one of my favorite whole soy foods to recommend, and there's a lot of different applications of them. I've made like tempeh bacon, and it's delicious. It's not bacon, but it tastes delicious. And so there's a world of different choices for you to explore. Next up, tomatoes, and we're like just coming out of like tomato season, right? So delicious right now. Maybe you've heard tomatoes have lycopene, and lycopene is the phytochemical that's responsible for that vibrant red color, but also there are other varieties of tomatoes, like if we have yellow or green, they have different phytochemicals, but they still also have lycopene. They've been shown to inhibit prostate cancer growth and metastasis in preclinical data. Some really good information from a study that was conducted quite some time ago, but again, still holds its weight in terms of the information provided. They found that in 2/3 of men who were eating cooked tomatoes, they had a 66% lower risk for metastatic prostate cancer. So they were eating at least two, sometimes more, but at least two, that's all it took, 2 servings of cooked tomatoes per week. So for my men that get diagnosed, I highly encourage some cooked tomatoes in things like a marinara or using tomato paste in their vegetarian chili, a really simple way to make sure you're getting that lycopene. They also found in that study that 28% of the men had decreased risk for lethal prostate cancer in those that were eating the most compared to those that were eating the least amount of lycopene. So it sounds like lycopene is something that is worthy of our attention, right? Really good data there. So cooking the tomatoes seems to, and also eating the tomatoes with oil seems to enhance the potency of the lycopene. So really important to point out. So again, things like a marinara or I like to recommend tomato paste because it has like that umami flavor. Things like salsa, right? Because it's heated tomatoes in a jar, right? So it's a really great way for you to add that lycopene in a delicious way. So next, I just want to talk about some more specific foods that you might find worthwhile in consuming. Coffee, flax seeds, green tea, pomegranate, and turmeric. So they have been shown each in their own way to exert some cancer protective qualities. in terms of the whole food. So they've been shown to prevent DNA damage, to promote apoptosis, to reduce inflammation, inhibit angiogenesis, and then also regulate cell cycles that repair DNA mutations. All really good things. And I think this is a really good example on this slide to see that they exert their effect in different ways. And that's why a varied diet is important, right? Because they do different things in terms of the continuum of carcinogenesis, right? They step along the lines along each phase of the way. So let's start first with coffee, one of my favorite choices. Both decaf and regular coffee have potential phytonutrients that have beneficial compounds and exert cancer protection for prostate cancer. Tea as well. So the one thing to point out about tea is that decaffeinated green tea loses some of its polyphenol. So up to 25% of decaffeinated versions of green tea loses some of those polyphenols. You might have heard of EGCG, and that's a good example of a polyphenol that has anti-inflammatory properties. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have decaffeinated, just recognize you're going to get a little bit less. And I don't think it's enough for you not to drink it if you have a sensitivity to caffeine. And then lastly, flax seeds. So a really interesting research study found preoperatively for men, they put them on a low-fat diet, and they also added some flax seeds regularly to their diet. And they found, I guess, in the specimens in pathology after surgery, that they had reduced prostate cancer cell growth. I'm not sure how they determined that in the research study, but nonetheless, really helpful information to know, because eating the flax seeds I don't know if it was the sole predictor of the outcome in that study, but certainly an easy thing to incorporate in a cancer protective diet as well. Okay, I'm going to move on. Next up, pomegranate. So hopefully you recognize that's the whole pomegranate. It's cut in half, and those are the seeds inside. And pomegranate has this interesting compound called punicalagin, and it's been shown to decrease prostate cancer cell growth. Really great, right? So a lot of times I like to recommend looking for either the whole pomegranate and just cut it in half and smack the back of it with a wooden spoon, and the seeds come right out. Or you could buy the seeds individually. They do the work for us nowadays. So you'll find in the produce section, it's refrigerated, they'll have servings of the seeds, so we don't even have to do that work, right? And it's a great way to add a really nice burst of flavor, but getting that punicalagin. I like to recommend that on things like oatmeal in the morning, or if you're making a smoothie, or on top of a green salad. It's really delicious. Really kind of something special. And then good old turmeric. So curcumin is responsible for giving turmeric that burnt orange color. And curcumin is known as the anti-cancer spice. It does have anti-proliferative as well as pro-apoptotic effects on prostate cancer cells. So I hear different recommendations for using turmeric in the diet. A lot of times I'll recommend using it as a spice if you roast vegetables, or if you're making again, a traditional curry. It's a great way to incorporate some turmeric. Some people I work with will use turmeric in a tea. They'll get the actual root like you see there on the slide, and they'll just break some of that off and put it in some boiling water and enjoy, or pour some boiling water over the root and enjoy some turmeric tea that way. I want to just finish with a couple of thoughts on a couple special things that are worth your attention as well after being diagnosed. So the first is vitamin D. But lower blood levels of vitamin D are associated with aggressive forms of prostate cancer. So good old the sunshine vitamin, as we call it, as you see on the image there. So vitamin D, as it turns out, is involved with controlling cell growth and differentiation. That's very important in the world of oncology, and learning that vitamin D is more than just implicated in bone health, that it actually has these proliferative properties, was really, I think, it really changed the way we look at vitamin D in terms of clinical applications. So I do want you to understand that, and this is very often sometimes the case with any dietary supplement, that there's not a linear relationship, meaning to say that if I take a lot of it, that must mean it's really good for us, right? Or it's really good for me. So we don't see a linear relationship. We actually see a U-shaped curve So we don't want to assume more is better. We actually want to assume enough is good. All right. So when I say a U-shaped curve, that means too little and too much is detrimental. So we see that with blood levels. So if you have a low blood level or a very high blood level, this is detrimental, and it actually has been associated with adverse outcomes for those diagnosed with cancer, but also prostate cancer. So what we want is to be right in the middle and have just the right amount. And that's what blood work will show, so that you know for yourself, you don't have too much, you don't have too little, you have just the right amount. Okay. So you can ask your provider, your care provider, if you can check your blood levels. You can see what number you're starting at and if you need more. Or sometimes this has happened to me a couple times in clinic where someone was taking too much, and we actually took them off the vitamin D because their levels were a little too high. Okay, and one final note, I want to talk about endocrine disruptors. So endocrine disruptors are all classified as PFASs. So there's BPA, phthalates, and then per and polyfluoroalkyls. That's a mouthful. They're really ubiquitous. They're found in our environment. They're probably in us. There's nothing we can do about that. They're in our food packaging for sure. And then also to storage containers for food, but also things like cosmetics. So they're really, again, ubiquitous in our environment and probably within our body. The concern about these chemicals are that, and we call them endocrine disruptors because they impact and they modulate androgen as well as estrogen receptors. They also impact and modulate insulin and thyroid hormones. So our bodies, how much we make of them, how much we're utilizing them or not. So really important to know. Through epigenetics, we see that sometimes in some individuals, these endocrine disruptors may promote migration, differentiation, proliferation of hormone-producing cells. So this is really important for someone who's diagnosed with a hormone-related cancer like prostate cancer. So sometimes we'll talk strategy and we won't, this isn't such compelling information where we disregard the recommendations that I just presented from that graphic, right? That graphic's where like really the weight of the research is. But this is something else to explore. If you agree, you're ready to sort of start to minimize the use of some plastics, right? Especially single-use plastics. So we can reduce using them, right? We can reduce using them for storing our food, and we certainly can reduce heating our food in them, such as in the microwave. By just making some substitutions and choosing some things that are maybe microwave safe, but are not plastic. And even just buying things in bulk or storing in non-plastic containers. What I do have is a handout that's going to be especially helpful. So if you registered for the program, you will have that handout sent to you. And what it does is it just helps you understand how to reduce some of those plastics, and then which plastics to look for that are less likely to have these endocrine disruptors. Okay, so be on the lookout for that from me. So I just want to share my favorite resources for you that you, maybe if you agree, you want to expand on your information and what you learned today. You might want to check out some of these resources. So I mentioned the AICR, the American Institute for Cancer Research. That's a direct link to their website. They, again, are the experts in the world of food, nutrition, exercise, and cancer. And it has a very comprehensive website full of recommendations for you to consider. Even things like recipes, even things like foods that fight cancer. So you can learn specifically how to help make an impact in your diet. The Prostate Cancer Foundation in September has this really fun challenge. It's on their website. I think they have a social media thing. I also got sent this actual image that you see on the slide. It's 30 foods in 30 days. What you probably see, like broccoli's right there, center stage, is a lot of plant foods here. And so when you click on the website, you can click on the broccoli and it'll bring you to, what is cancer protective about it, and then ways to enjoy it in a healthful diet. So I thought it's a really great campaign if you're looking to really look for ways to find specific choices and integrate them into your diet. And great that it's September, but you could do this any time of the year, right? And then sometimes people ask me about different traditional diets, such as a vegetarian diet or a Mediterranean diet. And I like to recommend this last resource, Old Ways, because again, it has a comprehensive review, especially if you're interested in the Mediterranean diet, which is a version of a plant-based diet. It gives you lots of recipes, lots of information, and I think motivation and inspiration towards making some of those shifts towards plant-based eating. All right, and with that, we have a few minutes left for some questions. I'm going to end my slide share there. And see what questions we have.
I think, Lori, let's go ahead and end the recording.
Mhm.
People can talk. So thanks everybody for watching the recording. If you have, we appreciate